Hey, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of the Maps Are Dead podcast. The whole conversation, these are live, unscripted conversations based on how do you create a compass for yourself when the world is run off the map? The idea is the maps are dead because maps only work if somebody's been where you're going. So having conversations, this is season 2. We ran a bunch of episodes. Season 1 had conversations with a lot of different folks, but I want to kick off this season with a really good friend of mine. He's a master. In fact, he has been my coach at times in his life. Johan Martinez. Joe, it is so excited to have you here. Here's the deal. Joe is a mental performance coach. He has literally coached people all over the world in all kinds of settings. He has helped professional athletes win championships. He's helped moms figure out how exactly it is to navigate that line between career and performance and family. He's helped dads navigate their worlds. But here's the craziest part. I've also seen Joe, when I first met him, navigate a room full of junior high kids. Joe, I promise this conversation will be easier than a gymnasium full of screaming teenagers. I promise it'll be easier today.
Man, yeah, that's one of the hardest crowds to speak to. I've actually spoken as young as fourth grade. I did a third and fourth grade room.
Seriously,
that was
third and fourth grade.
Third and fourth grade. You got to get your fart jokes ready.
You got to stand and dance and do the whole thing.
Listen, with those types of crowds, obviously, you just got to stick to stories.
Yeah,
We'll talk about like the map doesn't work. You got to follow the compass of the story. And
like,
then
where did they laugh? Where do they not laugh? You kind of have to be ready to respond to the room, right?
got my compass going. At the end of it, I did like a little Q&A because that's always fun with third and fourth graders. And there was this little girl who she raised her hand. She was like, "Do you believe in unicorns?" Like, but dead serious, like you could see the look in her eye was like,
this was going to be the deal breaker when she listened to you or not.
Like, if you answer this incorrectly, you're done. You're dead in my eyes.
You're dead to me.
So, I was like, of course I do. And she was like, okay, good. All right, good.
Joe, man, because you did the public speaking thing for a really long time, and you've been an actor. You've appeared in films and pilots and all these other things. But when I met you, you were still speaking and you were starting to transition to coaching, and that was years ago now. And at this point, man, you've stood with people in some really intense moments. So I wanted to have this conversation because you are truly one of my closest friends, and your work has impacted my life and helped me clarify my own compass beyond Clifton Strengths. And I've got Joe's Clifton Strengths on the board here behind me. If you're watching live, you're listening in. Joe, his top 5, we made him take it again recently: communication, ideation, strategic, woo, and restorative. So if you're listening along and you're listening for, hey, are any of my themes in there? Joe has communication, ideation, strategic, woo, and restorative. But beyond Clifton Strengths and other things like that, like, Joe, you have had to navigate some pretty big moments, right? You've been betting on yourself as an actor the early days and betting on yourself and kind of taking the non-traditional path. When you think about moments when no one else could tell you what to do and you had to navigate it, there was no map. Anything stand out to you as one of the biggest moments you've had to navigate on your own?
To me, it's not anything. It's like, how do I filter it down?
Right. You're like, I graduated college and then the map was gone.
No, I'm talking about, 10 years old. I'm talking about like 8 years old. As I realized some of my past, right? And I think some of us have this type of story where our parents were doing the best that they could and they were working a ton. So a lot of my young life was me having to figure out how to navigate something like the inner city of Chicago as a kid. I remember I was walking myself to and from school when I was in third grade in one of the worst areas in Chicago. I mean, talk about, you need a compass to figure that out. Another aspect is I always wished, so again, no knock on my parents. My parents did the best that they could. But I always wish that my parents sat me down to teach me more like leadership dynamics or like, here's what it means to be a young man and here's what it means to be a leader. And, my folks didn't have that thing. I had to figure all that out growing up. I'll share a couple moments even growing up in Chicago where this was me doing the best that I could to kind of take a swing at things and see, like, does this work? I remember I was playing basketball. So basketball was my first love in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago watching this guy 24/7. And I would say he was like the dude that I aspired to because basketball was my sport. And on one particular day, I'm playing ball and one of the local gang members, so the local gang in my area was called the Cobras.
Like something out of Karate Kid.
It's like, I don't know if you've seen Warriors, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
what? So one of the members of the Cobras comes up to me, not Cobra Kai from
Not
Karate
Cobra
Kid.
Kai.
Yeah, you can see what era we grew up in, right?
Totally.
But he comes up to me and he's like, yo, you want to be a Cobra? And kind of like after school special type of dynamic going on here. Because most of us, we watch those old school stories and it's like, okay, now this kid he's gonna put up with turmoil because the local gang wants to like reel him in. And I remember I just looked at him and I was like, nah, man, I just want to hoop. I just want to play basketball. And he looked at me and he goes, all right, you hoop and we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna watch out for you. Right? Because again, this was not like
Yeah.
after special,
It
like,
was like a
well,
school special. We're gonna kill you if you don't join our gang.
we're going to beat you up until you join the gang. It was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
But it gave me, and again, I didn't have words at that stage in my life that helped me understand what I chose was something that I loved. I chose something that I was passionate about. And it was really cool to experience somebody who wanted something from me, who instead said, okay, I could see what you're about and you know what you're about. Like, it's clear that you know who you are and what you want to be about. So now we're going to protect you.
It's so interesting that if you had followed the narrative, you could have been defensive. You could have been afraid. You could have said, no, man, you're trying to get me. Like, if we'd followed the after the school special script, how different could that scenario have been? Instead of just simply saying, look, this is what I love. If you'd been defensive, like, who knows where that story could have gone. If going, well, this person's trying to do this, I should fight back. I should be defensive and push them back. And say, instead of just being like, look, this is what hey, I love this, man. I'm not trying to be anything else.
Yeah. I'm like, this is who I am. This is what I love. And again, now you have the local gang that's supposed to be bad.
Yeah.
Basically gather around me and look after me as a kid.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. A lot of times, they would just have my back for things. And, our area was chaos at times. And I actually needed protection from them from time to time. So for me, that's an example of like, I had an internal compass as a kid and didn't even know it, that was helping me navigate the world as I continue to figure out who I am, what I'm about. Because I realized I have leadership skills at a young age. And part of it was like standing up for what I believed in, no matter what.
When did you realize it? When did you realize that there's no one else, there's no map and it's on you and you're like, yeah, okay, I can navigate this. Were you aware of it before, or was it things that build up and you're like, wait a second, I seem to know, I can see before everyone else can see?
Well, I'll share a story that I share pretty often because I think for me, this is when it started to kind of click for me, even though I still wouldn't say that at that age of my life, I could articulate it the way that I can now. But when I was in seventh grade, I was leaving my house. And my parents were divorced growing up. So, I went back and forth between staying with my dad and staying with my mom. When I would stay with my mom, my uncle would be around, and my uncle was alcoholic, drug dealer. He was also a gang member. He was a part of the Latin Kings. And on this particular day, I'm walking out through the living room and I see my uncle laid out on the couch basically at 8 in the morning. But on this particular day, he's like stone cold drunk and it's 8 in the morning. And it was the type of drunk where you could smell the stench of liquor and it just filled the whole room. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I remember just looking at him and I went through these series of internal questions as a kid. Again, no map.
Right.
Nobody gave me these questions, but I'm like looking at him saying, man, is this my future? Is this who I'm going to be? Is this what I have to look forward to? So, and again, like those are map compass type of questions. Where am I headed? And I was just looking at him saying to myself, you know what? I'm going to be the complete opposite of him. No matter what, everything that he chose, I'm going to choose differently. So I said, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do drugs because he also, dabbled. At the time, I said, I'm never going to join a gang. And he was also quite the womanizer. So I said, you know what? I'm the first girl that I'm with, even sexually, I'm going to make sure that I love her. And, I'm in seventh grade.
Right.
Making like on my way to school.
Yeah.
With my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle backpack on. Just look, for whatever reason, these things hit me. And as I left for school that day, it wasn't a regular day for me anymore. It was like, okay, I have these convictions now. I had a new clarity of like what I was about. And as I navigated life, it became my reputation. Like Johan, we would go to parties, and this is where, again, I learned like the people that are your friends and the people that are not your friends, because I would go to parties and people would be, asking me to drink.
Yeah.
And the people who were my friends would say, no, Joe doesn't, like, he don't drink. Yeah. And again, it was like, I was about these things and my people would support me.
Yeah. But it's so amazing. I'm going to draw a strange connection
Yeah,
because
yeah,
something
yeah.
it just stands out to me is so one of the things we find with Clifton Strengths teams specifically is restorative. With restorative in the top 5, that restorative has often seen what we call chaos up close before the age of 18, and will try to fix it or saw it and said, I want the opposite of it. I had a guy one time out of the blue ask me, he had restorative top 5 and he was in medical school. And he's like, do you think I become a doctor because I lived in a car with my mom when I was 6? And people think medical school is hard, but I lived in a car. And he was talking about how I just determined I would, and the broken different stories. So one, when that story comes up for me, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that your restorative was so, I forget that you have restorative sometimes, how much that story showed up that gift was naturally in there already of navigating, wait, restorative wanting things to be whole, going, this scene I'm seeing is not a whole healthy thing. I have to make choices to make my life a healthy thing, the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But the thing that really stands out to me, because I think it plays into the other part of your story, and I wanted to know if you see this in other people, is that I was able to publish my first academic white paper in the last 90 days. Actually, right before Christmas, it was published. And it was the first ever quantitative study of the distribution of Clifton Strengths in athletes from professional to high school. And so NCAA athletic. But what was one of our big standouts is comparing to the general population, themes that show up differently in high performing athletes in comparison to the general population is restorative. Is that restorative in the general population falls down somewhere around 13th or 14th. However, we found it dominantly in the top 5. And so if I take the connection of people navigating their childhood and trying to navigate and knowing that part of our brains are developing in that history and experience of developing this talent to really see beyond the moment and make choice about what they want, and how that connects into sport. So many times, like even with the Olympics going right now, we often find that there's high performance connection to people who have to navigate traumatic and difficult situations in their childhood. Have you found that with some of the athletes that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, I not necessarily in terms of restorative, but yes, having to navigate very difficult
Yes.
dynamic, and a lot of those dynamics are actually parent to child, so that was a pattern that I had seen too. It's like, oh, you had a pretty tough relationship with your dad or,
Yep.
with your mom. And then there are times where the pathway that they had was like everybody would doubt them and, they would hear all the you can't do it type of stories from the external world and they found a way to figure it out too.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find that when this idea of like maps are dead, hey, you have an internal compass, there's some people they go, well, of course I do, right? There's certain themes. And in fact, Clifton Strengths themes, if you're interested in those folks and you're following along, one of the domains is influencing themes, which is the rarest occurring of all the themes in the Clifton Strengths world. And people like that, they say things like, I believe I can create my future. And so people with influencing themes, they go, of course, there's no compass because I'm creating my future. And so it's really natural. Whereas others can be so conditioned to control an adult world by performing to make the adult happy. So, or they have a roadmap that is really, really different in some ways. Do you remember being able to spot people that you're like, oh, this person, they too know that they're navigating on their own? Or, yeah, I don't have to please these other people in this way. Was there a season where you started to figure out, because I have people say, yeah, I can spot somebody who's like me, or yeah, I can spot someone who's on their own journey. Like you can spot it. Do you remember starting to find your people and starting to see that?
I feel like that started to happen in college because I feel like I stood alone for such a long time. In our early years, one of our primary inclinations is to belong. And I think a lot of times what we do in order to belong is try to fit in and talk like everybody else. So I think that was one of the things that for me, I was okay with standing out and not being like everybody else. But for the most part, as I was growing up, I felt like everybody was, we gotta be like everyone. It wasn't until I got into college that I started to say, oh wow, you're different too. And you're willing to own your uniqueness. And that became actually one of the first things that I started to speak about. It was like almost like calling out, inviting folks to be that,
Yeah.
right? The unique individual that you are. And I really believe that that's, if we want to call it the goal of this compass life, if you figure out who you are, if you figure out your unique contribution, now you can trust your compass. Now you got to sift through a lot of bullshit in order to get there, as we all know. And sometimes we can't differentiate between, well, what is me and what is the conditioned me, and which makes it difficult. And so I think that's part of what I love to do with folks is like chip away at that manufactured self. so that you can find your true you.
And because if I even think, I know your story a little bit as we've worked together and spent time together and spoke together, and is that it's pretty clear that there's a twist, and it wasn't like when you were a teenager, but later of, hey, I'm going to navigate my own path and I'm going to work to impact the external world the way I see it. And there's a moment when impacting the external world shifts to, I'm going to impact my internal world. And I feel like even in your work level, it shifts, like you are the guy I think of that goes, actually, let's start with impacting that inside of you. Let's say it's shifted. And by the way, the impacted inside will eventually impact the outside, but there's a moment that shifts that. Does that show up in your journey? Do you get a sense of the season when that occurred for you?
Yeah, I would say if I were to circle, so I think there's a couple moments, right? The first one that comes to mind is I left Chicago when I was 29 years old, and I left the comfort zone. I left safety. So a couple things for me. One, I'm the Chicago kid who believes Chicago's the best city in the world. And I was
Still
a Chicago.
believes it.
Yeah, still believes. Still believe
that is Michael Jordan behind you. I mean, let's just be clear about the wall behind your head.
And growing up, if you're around Chicagoans, we're kind of obnoxious in that way.
Greatest city in the world.
You can't be shy-town. And that was me. Like, I'm like, I'll never leave. And, I'll be here until the day that I die. But there's something started to stir in me. And that thing was like, oh, I think your time here is done. I think, which again was very foreign, and I never even entertained a thought like that. But for me, it was about understanding that there's a new level of transformation and growth outside of my comfortable world and outside of what I know. Now, part of that too is like being Latino. So I'm Puerto Rican and Persian. You don't leave where the family is. So that was huge for me too, right? Is like, I'm going to leave where my family is to go to another place to continue to figure out what it means to be me and what it means, again, internally to excavate. Because if I just wanted to please my family, if I just wanted to please, the whole Chicago world, I would have stuck around. But I was like, I know there's something else in me. And I really believe I can't figure it out until I leave, which is very, hero's journey type of dynamic. And that's part of why I think when I went to LA, I started to dive into the story world, because of it. So I think that's part one. I think the other part was there was a relationship that I had once I got to LA, and it was off and on for 4 years with the girl who's an actress where, I don't have to communicate her name, but it was volatile. Sure. It was up and down. And when it ended, I think most of us have the temptation when relationships end to blame another person. And for me, like, it was the first time in my life when a relationship ended where I was like, okay, even though X and Y wasn't okay with her, what was it inside of me? And this is what, maybe even to bring it full circle with my story about my uncle. In the midst of that breakup, I realized, well, I'm an addict. I'm just not addicted to substances. I'm addicted to this idea of love. I'm addicted to fixing people, because that was part of what kept me going back, is like, maybe if I do this and then it could change. And then maybe and I was trying to fix something that wasn't fixable. And I was, I had this idea of love that kept bringing me back to it. That wasn't real. It wasn't a part of that dynamic. And I read a book called Breathing Underwater.
Oh, I love that book. It's one of my favorites. Breathing Underwater, the life changer. That's a life changer. Breathing Underwater. If you haven't read it, you should pick it up.
So that was, again, there's plenty of these types of moments for me that helped me understand I got to do the work inside of me.
Yeah.
And that was like truly revolutionary for me. There's other ways that I could even continue to go deeper with this story, but just to answer your question, there's a couple big moments for me where I had to figure out inside of me what was going on in order to do the work externally.
That's, so good, Joe. And I think I hadn't thought we'd go there, but I'll touch this, and there's something in your story because of the work you do that makes you think of this. But Breathing Underwater was fascinating. I worked in convicted juvenile drug addiction with juvenile felons right after college. And so I used to work with this addictions counselor named Donna. Years later, I read Breathing Underwater, which is this idea that we're all addicts in some form and we're addicted to something. Usually we're addicted to our own opinion, among other things. So we have an addiction, a drug of choice. And in the midst of that, I remember years and years ago, Donna teaching this young white kid from the middle of nowhere, small town America, working with juvenile offenders in San Jose, California, all 80% gang related, 13 to 19 years old, living in a house. And I'd be like, but this is real. These kids, they're responding. I'm thinking, I'm having all this impact. It's one part savior syndrome, one part whatever, and juvenile, just being young. And she's like, remember, Mike, you can never be in a relationship with an active addict. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, she's like, because she herself was in recovery. She's like, Mike, you cannot be in a relationship with an addict because an addict in the active addiction has no room for truth. She was like, all they know is they need their need met, and there's no place for truth in that. And so then when I started unpacking when I would be in broken relationships in moments and when I would show up, I'm like, these relationships aren't working because I'm not even dealing in my own truth. I'm not even dealing with like what I own. I'm not dealing in like, I'm like, oh, they thought they were in a relationship with me. No. They were in a relationship with somebody who's actively trying to get their needs met, not actually. And that's why for me, breathing underwater was huge because I'm like, wait, these moments and things are falling apart. A large portion of that is because I'm actually not, there's no truth here. I'm an addict in the throes of their own addiction just to really go there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's real. And this is what I believe. I believe we're all addicts. We just don't know it. So that was some of my arc, when I was 11 and I shared the story earlier. I had seen myself as different than the addict, and again, at that stage of my life, it was like created some convictions and some reasons to show up. But I almost like despised addiction. And it made me self-righteous in a lot of ways. And maybe my younger ego type of self needed that in order to stand strong. But as I got older, I could see how superficial or shallow some of those things were in me, and how once I was willing to look at it, some of the pain that I was experiencing and suffering was because of the addictions that I didn't want to look at. And again, I think part of the problem too is our world celebrates certain addictions and it despises other addictions, right? It shuns certain substance addictions. But if you're addicted to work and as a result you become a millionaire, oh man, you're the boss. Like,
we're gonna have them write books on you and promote you and make memes about the things you say.
yeah. Well, even again, so this is for, I would say our line of work, right? Wanting to change people or fix people is an addiction. So again, now I can tweak that so that it's no longer coming from the addictive place. And it's like, okay, now I'm tapped into wholeness. I'm not here to fix you or to change you. I'm here to hold space. I'm here to reflect back. It's not my job to change you. It's my job to support you in your own change. See, and that's what I had figured out, which allowed me to finally take that space. And this is why I think I'm a really good coach, is because as a coach, I know it's not my responsibility. Now, again, for my family, I made it my responsibility, right? It was like,
you have to recondition that one.
Have to be the one who goes in and changes everything. And as you can imagine, kept hitting my head up against the wall. Now, this is the irony of like these things, because it actually helped me develop some really great skills.
Sure.
Right?
Redemption's a beautiful thing. Something was about survival and brokenness. It becomes like redemptive later.
Yeah. It's like, this is why it's not a map, because through me mucking it up, trying to fix and trying to change, I learned a ton. And then when I went internally, like we talked about, to figure my own shit out, now I can come at it from a very like neutral place. Now, that doesn't mean I've arrived. There's still areas where that part of me does come up, but that's where I need to lead and control myself in those areas.
I think in learning that's a big challenge to learn to not judge yourself. I too can, I grew up in a very conservative religious environment where there's do's and don'ts, and I'm not judging whether or not the do's and don'ts are good for you. But the bigger thing was the judgment that went to those that did. Yeah. Oh, they smoked, they drank, they were whatever, they did all these things. And there was a judgment associated with that. So therefore, for me, the thought of addicts were people who just didn't control themselves well enough, people who just didn't do well enough. And so I get to live in this pious place of, to your point, my addictions were invisible, their addictions were physical. And so therefore, I could judge that they're failing in this effort. So then having to wrestle through having my own drives, it's this idea of going, my brain believes it's required for survival and it's doing something that actually isn't working, but it doesn't know enough. And I have to deconstruct the lies that these addictions are built on without judgment, of going, somehow I'm learning that this is survival for me, and I need to unlearn this and find actual truth and actual helpful ways of being. And I think that's a big, and so it was the part of what even working with you, the thing, Joe, that stands out to me that is often shocking is I tell people, somebody asks me about your coaching, and I'm like, Joe is a high performance coach who believes the greatest performance of your life will come when you learn to not perform.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this concept of being able to live in the actual tension of, guess what? You talk about the relationship. Hey, what part of this relationship was breaking up and chaotic because of me? But it's also not, I don't need to own that. Living in the tension of that, where it's like, hey, I should stop trying to just control the outside world and control me, but I also don't need to be egocentric.
Right.
And you naturally invite people who are seeking high performance and transformational coaching into an acceptance and almost embracing of the tension of these things. Is
Yeah,
that a good way to describe what you like, focus on and how you show up?
absolutely. Which I think, the metaphor that you've created here is really powerful and pertinent to what we're talking about because it is about, hey, compass.
There's directions on a compass, but no
Yeah.
specifics.
Right, right. And again, it's not that, so you may have a map and that's okay, but there are times where the map doesn't work.
Yep.
You
It's a
have a
good
compass.
start.
Yeah. Do you have a compass? And can you find your way when the map isn't working? So it goes back to the both and the tension, right? Many of us, people come to me because they want me to give them answers. And I think sometimes the same thing for you, right?
Sure.
And then that's
Yep.
our temptation. Again, it goes back to like, if I need to feel adequate, I'm going to give you the answer because I got to feel like I'm useful in the world. But if I know who I am and I know where power is, and I've done this to people, right? Where I'm like, hey, I can sense you want me to give you an answer. I'm not going to give you an answer because if I do that, I'm gonna short circuit your growth.
Yeah.
And in the moment, they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right. Right.
I'm paying you a lot of good money.
I'm paying for the answer. I've been on the calls where they're like, could you just skip to the end and tell me the part? And we're
Give me
like,
the thing. Give me the
no.
right. Give me the map. Give me the map. Give me the map. Give me the map.
Yeah.
And it's sitting with them in that discomfort, in that tension, to help them understand. Listen, the most powerful growth for you is not in my answer. It's in you wrestling with the question. It's in you figuring out what is my direction?
Yeah.
Where is my true north?
And
How do I find my way? Those are compass questions.
uh,
And so just like you're saying, right? It is not in performance, it is in presence. So that's where I think all my work is if I can hold a powerful space for the person and help them figure out who they are, now they can capture a powerful presence, which ironically does help you create results. But like you said, it's not because you're performing anymore. You're actually no longer performing. You're being yourself. And that creates powerful results.
and I think letting go of that performance mindset is about realizing that your performance isn't you. It's that internal shift into going, I can let go of performance because I am not my performance.
Right.
Despite the fact that I was told if I didn't make noise, that daddy wouldn't be angry and wouldn't do X, Y, and Z, or teacher would like me and I would get acclaimed. Like all the stories that shape the way we try to make sense of our world, a lot of that will recondition that my performance equates to safety. I want to belong, right? We all want to be loved and accepted without conditions and know we're never alone. Somebody said one time, it's this idea of and so realizing instead, actually, I can craft an internal identity, internal sense of myself and who I am and integrated with all of its flaws and say, I have a commitment to being and I want to be somebody who's growing versus and I hope that growth produces fruit versus saying I'm trying to go somewhere. I have to become and get to a destination. And I think we don't, so it's that cliche that is so destroyed, right? It's about the journey, but there is something about really getting into the benefits that come with the journey. I think that's part of what makes this extraordinary. Like I was thinking about this the other day. There's a study in Poland, I think, with breast cancer doctors, radiologists reading breast cancer screens. And
Yeah.
think of it. You would love to be known as a great doctor who spots cancer and saves lives. That would be amazing. And so what ends up happening is they took these doctors who were spotting breast cancer on the mammograms and things like that and said, we think we can help impact you. And they brought in an AI system to read breast cancer screenings. And breast cancer went from 74% spotting to almost 90, like 92, 95% of spotting breast cancer early, which was pretty significant. And for these doctors, it was amazing and they're saving more lives. And so they're going to get the acclaim of, I'm a doctor who uses AI and I'm saving even more lives. They took the system offline for 6 months and said, hey, we're going to revise the software and bring it back to you. And when they came back, during that time, the doctors went back to going what they'd always done before. They were almost 75% success rate. What they found was their spotting of cancer research dropped almost 47%.
Wow.
Because their practice of what it took to grow to become world-class cancer doctors was getting stale because that growth of being in it, just like we want you to spot cancer, but by taking away parts of it, by not properly going, wait a minute, I'm going for the answer, not the growth. It just reminds me of your conversation so much when I want to skip to the end and you're going, Mike, the end won't be as satisfying if you don't take the hike to get to the end first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And again, we're outsourcing. I think this is why there's a big dilemma that many of us are talking about now with AI, which is outsource the struggle for the sake of the final answer. And what we're doing as humans is we're giving away a lot of our power. We're giving away a lot of our own genius. Now, again, if it's all for the sake of productivity and efficiency, and I got answers now, but yeah, like you said, now when you take it away, what do you have? What,
Yeah.
who are you?
Yeah. And knowing how to come alongside. I know coaches, I have this conversation with coaches a lot. You know, I have a team of folks. If I was Googling what questions to ask Johan based on these top 5 themes, you know what? ChatGPT would give me a whole bunch of questions. Claude would give me even better, Gemini, whatever. And I said, listen, guess what? I am not a marketer. I need to market myself. I probably should ask some AI for good marketing. But the minute I stop having to do the work of listening to you and getting in the process of learning questions, I'm not going to be better. It might be easier. It might be quicker. I'm not better at going, did I listen when he said, you know what, I learned about addiction and respond to that. And I think knowing when a tool is meant to augment what you don't have versus you're replacing it and running for an answer and you're shortchanging yourself from the growth.
Which is performance versus presence. And I think that's exactly at the core of it, which is, all right, if I can perform, I got the right answer. I mean, I got the right questions and I got the right marketing tools. And okay, so now let me perform all those things instead of, sometimes it's very simple. If I'm going to be present, I'm going to listen, I'm going to notice, and I'm going to trust that just by being that way as a human being, gold will come out of the conversation, which again is more compass oriented. The first way is a map. These are your 10 questions. This is what a good interview looks like. This is what would make it a successful marketing dynamic. Okay, let me just follow those steps. The compass is way more unpredictable. It's full of uncertainty. It's full of mystery. And I think that's why most of us don't want to follow a compass type of life is we want control. I think that's what we need to be honest about. We want control. We don't want adventure. To me, that's the truth of the matter is if we wanted adventure, we would take the compass.
We want the story of being an adventurer, but we don't want to take an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, a true adventure is I don't know all the twists and turns and I don't even know if we're going to get there, but you know what? It's worth going out on the adventure. And that's what I'm going to say yes to.
Joe, you, in the short time we got left, what you said a minute ago, it really is in presence, not performance. That's a pretty big statement for somebody who literally has the highest performing athletes and founders and people who are truly, you work with people across the spectrum, but you truly work with people who are measured in their performance. I mean, they stand at a plate and their stats are literally on giant scoreboards in front of their face while 40,000 people are either screaming or booing their name. The journey of having somebody come to you who is probably seeking performance, they want to be known for the better performance. What is the first steps on the train station for them to realize that actually I have to get to presence? What are some things that they have to become aware of to make that transition from I am a performance-focused individual and my success and my health and happiness and well-being reside in my presence? Have you seen an evolution of where that starts in the conversation with people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say there's no like tried and true, this is the first thing that happens or this is the first thing that I see because everybody has a different entry point.
Right.
And I always like to say, which you've heard me say this before, the person is the curriculum. So I'm always watching out for, well, what's the thing inside of them that they need to see or realize so that they can shift into this, oh, it's not about me performing anymore. So sometimes let's say it is about them realizing how judgmental they are and how they're judging themselves 24/7 because it is about performance, right? I'm judging my performance. I did good. I did bad. I did right. I did wrong. I got the result. I didn't get the result. So sometimes that's the first thing we need to capture is let's notice how your judgment, because you're so addicted to performance, is holding you back. Even on a simple level, if we say like, are you having fun when that's the way that you think? Are you enjoying your day to day? And every single time it's like, no, it is a weight on my shoulders because of how much I'm judging my performance. So once we get away, once we can shift from judgment to curiosity or even neutrality, there's a lightness now, which is the transition already to presence.
Yep.
Because now I'm no longer just looking at I did good, I did bad, I did good, I did bad.
Yeah. But I think that's key what you just said though too. I heard a Navy SEAL guy one time I was talking to say the key to high performance in their sector of work, obviously SEAL team, is radical self-forgiveness. Because they're like self-judgment and shame take away our performance and we have people's lives to save. Radical self-forgiveness was key. But here's the other thing you just said is that I don't think people even realize that neutral is an option. I think there'd be power in them realizing that if you're stuck in a pattern of self-judgment on everything you're doing, what if it's simply neutral and you can make it what you want it to be? What if it's neither good nor bad? Like, I think that would be mind shaking for some people.
Yeah. Which is, to me, it transitions into the other thing that I see that's pretty common, right? Where people attach their identity to their performance, which is a huge problem. And you're on a roller coaster if you are your results. So once we can notice it, because a lot of what I love to work on with folks is let's work on noticing, which means now we can separate you from the result. You are not your results. Okay, if you're not your results, who are you? So now we get into the identity conversation. If you're not your results, who are you? And I remember one of the athletes that I was working with in our first year, 6 months into working with him, he's like, I'm just realizing I have no idea who I am. Because for so long, performance was his identity.
Yeah.
Results was his identity. And now the separation started to occur where he could say, holy shit, like I'm not my results. Right. That's not who I am. Okay, now I get to figure out truthfully who I am, which is the presence conversation. And now I can be that day to day and let the results be what they are. So now the results are data, the result information. So because I like to create that distinction at times for folks that I work in with, it's like, hey, the results either define you or they inform you. And once they can see, oh, there's a pathway where I could just let it be information, it doesn't have to be defining. They want to choose the pathway of data and information. And again, you can see how much more freedom there is because now they can be present with what's happening.
Yeah. And that's the word I wanted to land on, because I think that was one of the key. We worked together for a year as a coach. We worked professionally, but I hired you as a coach. And I remember that I think one of the greatest impacts on my performance personally as a professional was the freedom that came from that. And so I think everything you're talking about brings freedom in that way. Man, I love that you took time for me kicking this off, and I hope we can chat more again. I've loved, we've done this. We've chopped it up for hours at dinners and on the road. So it was fun to do it on camera. So man, thanks for making time for me today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I mean, I love the whole idea of like, let's chuck the maps and let's live by a compass. Obviously, we've talked about that plenty of times too, but I'm grateful for you, brother. I love this show and this series that you're cooking up. So
thanks, buddy.
Keep doing it.
I appreciate that. If you're following along and you have enjoyed this too, please share with a friend. Do all the things that I need you to do. The like, the subscribe, the fill crap out. Also, we are getting ready in the next 3 weeks to launch a new Circle community. It's going to have online digital resources and all different tiers to jump in. Literally, the only cost of access is your Clifton Strengths Top 5. You can get in there and find all kinds of interesting things. But if you have a comment or something you'd love to have on the show, please drop us a note in the link below. Love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time on Maps Are Dead.